Yahki Awakened, Refuted. Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Friday to each and every one of y'all. We made it through another work week, and we gotta praise God for that. Of course, we gotta say what's up to the illustrious, most amazing chat on this side of Al Gore's internet. We got the indelible, the incomparable, the indelible Mr. Nate 2D2 in the building. We got Tyler Lott in the building. We got Bodega Lady Shining Mills in the building. We got my man, the Reverend Nick Quint in the building. Hopefully, we'll be seeing you soon in October, sir. I predict it's going to be Yankees and Dodgers World Series. Of course, the Yankees, of course, being victorious in that matchup, but it will be a tough match. Dodgers are no scrubs at all. So, divinely, yes, BK stands for Brooklyn. It's the borough I reside in, born and raised, Brooklyn, the county of kings. You know what I mean? So, but for those, I'm glad you guys are coming in. Of course, we got the real American Mr. Phil Fox on the check-in. And if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend or tell a friend or tell a friend that it's him again. Please share this link so we can get the chat nice and popping. Of course, if you like how it goes down with BK, you can show your appreciation via the PayPal link that's pinned on top of the chat. Or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter of BK, you can become a patron. We get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. So, well, yeah, I guess that's an alternative definition there. Beautiful king. I mean, this is Nate's idea. It's not mine. So, but yeah, that. But BK does stand for Brooklyn Apologist. So, as an apologist in an urban setting such as Brooklyn, I like to defend the gospel and rebuff critiques and claims that against Christianity. And or at least people who misrepresent what Christianity is as well. So an individual that's done some of these things goes by the name of Yahki Awakened. Seems to be a rising star in the conscious community. I've seen quite a few of his TikToks show up on my timeline. And there's a video clip that I want to share with you guys. And we're gonna look at a couple of clips, and I'm gonna give some commentary, and see what he says is correct or not. All right. So with that being said, let's get to it.
Their roots behind them, literally, no exaggeration. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. I've read numerous creation stories, right? Whether it's the dreaming Aboriginal creation story, Egyptian creation story, where Ra knew shoot, American Hopi origin story, or the Dogon creation story by Amma. The one that makes the most sense to me is the Anunnaki, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Anunnaki theory of the origins of humans being created to be slaves, the violent nature of humans, massive increase in technology, and the character Adamu in the story that has similarities to the name and characteristics of Adam in the Bible. But the first thing I want to talk about, man, is the breakdown they have that human beings were created to be slaves.
Yeah.
So before we can even get to Yahki and what he's about to say, we got to look at what the host is saying here. Right? So he's saying out of all the creation stories, the Anunnaki makes the most sense to him. Right? that, you know, these aliens came and genetically engineered humans to enslave them, right? Is this true? Right? That's the thing we want to look at, right? So allow me to share my screen. All right. Here we go. So, and this is from ancientorients.net. The Sumerian corpus nowhere states that the creation of Adama or mankind was done so that humanity could serve as a slave species to mine gold, right? You're not going to find it in the Sumerian corpus. The Sumerian corpus is, you know, all these cuneiform tablets, you know, one of the most ancient writing systems on the planet. And, you know, we have a large amount of these tablets. Some of them are ABCderies, meaning that students learning how to write their ABCs in cuneiform form. We have stuff like that. We have tax records. We have found like ancient report cards. You know, there's this large trove, and we also have a lot of the stories of the Anunnaki. But nowhere in this corpus of literature says that humanity could serve as slave species to mine gold. Now, you don't have to take my word for it or ancientorigins.net for it. You could actually research it yourself. There's a website called the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, where you could go and you could type in, you know, the lemma for Anunnaki was Anunna, and it will give you all the occurrences of Anunnaki or various versions of that term that's mentioned throughout the corpus, because the whole corpus has been translated, and they've put the digital version of this corpus online, so anyone could just go and research and see that this is not the case, right? So you don't have to take BK's word for it or ancient, you know, origins.net. You can go and look at the text yourself. Okay. Now, where does this concept come from? Right? If it's not written in the corpus of these Sumerian tablets, where does this idea of these ancient aliens, right, coming down, engineering humans to make them servants for gold, right? Well, the Anunnaki, as they are portrayed in the books, television series, and other media, which promotes ancient astronaut theory, the article traced the portrayal of the Anunnaki popularized by back to Zachariah Sitchin's Earth Chronicles book series, and pointed out that Sitchin's version of the Anunnaki appeared nowhere in ancient Sumerian literature. So this very thing that the host is talking with Yahki about, this origin story, doesn't exist. It is a fictional tale created by Zachariah Sitchin. Central to Sitchin's narrative are a group of alien beings known as the Anunnaki, whom he claimed crossed their own DNA with that of Homo erectus in order to create mankind for the purpose of using humans as slaves to mine gold and other minerals. Right? So we can't find it in the actual primary resource. You can only find it in the imagination of Zachariah Sitchin. All right. So with that being said, we're gonna go back to the video. Just give me a second here. All right. Hold up. Da-da-da-da. Okay, here we go. And then we're gonna go to the 133 mark. Let's see what Mr. Yahki has to say here.
People, they need to be told what to do.
Yeah.
They're not really into like fending for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, biological entities that we call human beings have something called the worship gene. If anybody think I'm lying, just Google the worship gene in human beings. We have a worship gene. So there have been genes that have been unlocked in our systems, and certain other genes and DNA that have been suppressed that gives us the worshiping feeling. That's why, you know, Christianity is a very big worshiping type of religion. Every religion, whether you get into the Muslim community, every religion have a very, very worshiping type of entity that's involved in their interaction. And notice that they, instead of looking in the mirror and seeing that you are comprised of everything that God is truly made of, you look in the sky and you bow down and you live your life guided off these certain rules that was given to you by an entity that you can't even see. And instead you fail to look in the mirror and say, dang, I am a piece of that entity.
So he's claiming that the reason why Christianity has been so effective in these other beliefs is because within us, there's this thing known as the worship gene, right? So, of course, we got to see if this is true and where does it come from, right? So, we're going to look at Albert Moeller and see what he says here in his article. Social biologist Edward O. Wilson once declared religious belief to be, quote, the greatest challenge to human social biology and its most exciting opportunity to progress as a truly original theoretical discipline. In other words, Wilson admitted that belief in God is a fundamental challenge to the theory of evolution, since evolution cannot explain why this belief could be so widespread, so powerful, and so closely tied to human existence. Now, Dean Hammer, a geneticist at the National Cancer Institute at the National Institutes of Health, claims to have found the genetic explanation for a belief in God, a God gene that provides an evolutionary explanation for faith. Dean Hammer is looking for an explanation of belief in God that will fit his evolutionary worldview. In order to do this, he has to jettison all that is customarily associated with theism, avoid everything that has to do with the content of belief, and redefine his entire concern in terms of self transcendence, an experience he admits can be purely secular. In other words, Dean Hammer tells us absolutely nothing about belief in God and very little about modern genetics. This point was made devastatingly clear in the review of the God gene published in the current issue of Scientific American. Carl Zimmer, another major evolutionary theorist, blasts the God gene as bad science and reckless arguments. As Zimmer notes, the field of behavior genetics is littered with failed links between particular genes and personality traits. Those alleged associations at first seem very strong, but as other researchers tried to replicate them, they faded away into statistical noise. In 1993, for example, a scientist reported a genetic link to male homosexuality. Some of us might remember this. This definitely hit a lot of the papers. In a region of the X chromosome. The report brought a huge media fanfare, but other scientists who tried to replicate the study failed. The scientist's name was Dean Hammer. That's right. Dean Hammer is most famously for, or infamously known for his claim to have found a genetic explanation for male homosexuality. This study created a firestorm in the press, and though it was never replicated in order to establish scientific credibility, it became standard fare for arguments claiming homosexuality to be absolutely natural and therefore normal. As Zimmer laments, given the fate of Hammer's so-called gay gene, it is strange to see him so impatient to trumpet the discovery of his God gene. Zimmer then turns the table on Hammer, arguing that the God gene should have been entitled a gene that accounts for less than 1% of the variants found in scores of psychological questionnaires designed to measure a factor called self-transcendence, which can signify everything from belonging to the Green Party to believing in ESP, according to one unpublished, unreplicated study. In the scientific community, that's undiluted condemnation. So this whole idea of a God gene was created by this guy named Dean Hammer, who became known because he allegedly discovered the gay gene. But when other scientists try to replicate, what he had, nobody could. And the same thing has happened again with this worship gene, the God gene, right? So Mr. Yahki is 100% wrong when it comes to this, right? So let me see here. We're going 258. All right, here we go. Share my screen. And we're going to go to the 258 mark. We're going to see what Yahki has to say here.
Negative. Something marked not only our blood, but something marked our genetics. And I think Elohim, when you get into Elohim, that's my last name, Yahki Elohim. Elohim just means Anunnaki. It's these group of beings. When God's in the Bible says, God said, let us, plural. It says, and God said, and Elohim said, Elohim is God. And so when you look at the word Elohim, it means God with an S, gods, plural. So many gods created man. It said, is God, and God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. So it shows you that mankind is a template, and we look like our creator. That's the first thing they said, right? And then once you see that, then it says what they gonna do. I'm gonna give them the dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, whoopty whop and this and that. But notice the instruction came. He created Adam and Eve. He put Adam and Eve, Elohim did. So Elohim, these gods created man, this biological man. They put this man in a garden, right? So they put man in a garden, and then it says his whole purpose was to dress and keep the garden. So his whole purpose was for servitude in the first place. He was supposed to dress and keep this little simulation that the creator Elohim put him in. Then it said that he got smart and he disobeyed Elohim, right?
All right. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? So talks about, what the word Elohim means to Anunnaki, the role that Adam played in Genesis. There's quite a few things to unpack here. So let's get to it. Shout out to Carter C. Goodson. I see you. All right. So this is from FringePop321.com. Who are the Anunnaki? The University of Pennsylvania has been a center for the study of Sumerian lexicography for several decades. The initial volume of the Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary included their research on the term Anunnaki. It does not mean, as ancient alien theorists argue, quote, they who from heaven came. Rather, usage of the term in Mesopotamian text show it means, quote, priestly seed, highborn, or noble. That the term is used for people shows this meaning to be coherent. As a group of gods created by other gods, the concept of princely seed or being highborn makes sense. It is likewise sensible for humans of royal birth or born to parents of high social status to be called Anunnaki. So as you see here, the term Anunnaki has a various definition depending on the context the word has been placed in. So this whole idea of it being from a race of beings outside of our planet, you don't find it in the Sumerian or Mesopotamian stories at all. You know, there are gods who are known as the Anunnaki, but also those of noble birth. You know, those humans of a royal bloodline were also called Anunnaki as well. So depending on the way the word is used, it could be gods or it could be, royalty. But it's not extraterrestrials in the sense of Martians. Okay. Now, yeah, he talks about the word Elohim, and if you follow my channel, you know that a lot of these guys really have a misunderstanding of how the term is used, which is sad since his last name is Elohim. So you would think that you would know a little bit about your surname, but I digress. Several different entities are referred to as Elohim in the Old Testament. Considering this variety provides insight as to how the term should be understood. The Hebrew text of the Old Testament refers to the following as Elohim: Yahweh, the members of Yahweh's heavenly council, the God of foreign nations, demons, and spirits of the human dead. Right? So it's not just one thing. Right? Elohim can mean various individuals. Right? It could be Yahweh, it could be his council, it could be, you know, quote unquote, the other gods of these other nations, demons, or disembodied spirits. Okay? This variety demonstrates that the word should not be identified with one particular set of attributes. Elohim is not a synonym for God, which he said, he's like, well, God, you know, the word Elohim is synonymous with the Anunnaki. No, it's not at all. All beings called Elohim in the Hebrew Bible share a certain characteristic. They all inhabit the non-human realm. By nature, Elohim is not part of the world of humankind, the world of ordinary embodiment. Elohim, as a term, indicates residence, not a set of attributes. It identifies the proper domain of the entity it describes. Yahweh, the lesser gods of his council, angels, demons, and the disembodied dead all inhabit the spiritual world. They may cross over into the human world, as the Bible informs us, and certain humans may be transported to the non-human realm, like the prophets, like Enoch, but the proper domain for each are two separate and distinct places. So, is Yahweh called an Elohim? Yes. But as the late Michael Heiser was famous to say, Yahweh is an Elohim, but no Elohim is like Yahweh. Right? And these other beings, you know, are not an equal footing with Yahweh either. You know, since, you know, a lot of times we'll see in these articles, they'll use these terms, you know, gods. They don't mean that these gods are in equal footing with Yahweh. Right? It's talking about how these gods, these beings are worshipped as gods. But we, of course, we know that there's only one God, and that's, of course, Yahweh. Right? In Michael Heiser's book, Supernatural, in fact, says as much. The Hebrew term doesn't refer to a specific set of abilities only God has. The Bible distinguishes God from all other gods in other ways, not by using the word Elohim. For instance, the Bible commands the gods to worship the God of the Bible. He is their creator and king. No one in heaven is like you, Lord. None of the heavenly beings are your equal. You are feared in the council of the holy ones. The Bible writers are pretty blunt about the God of Israel having no equal. He is the God of gods. Right? Just so that we're clear, right? So even though the term Elohim might be used for Yahweh, it doesn't make Yahweh, it doesn't place Yahweh in equal footing with these other beings that might be called Elohim. No Elohim is like Yahweh. Right? Just let's be clear. Yahweh is an Elohim, right? He exists in the supernatural realm, but no matter what realm we're talking about, Yahweh is supreme. Okay. So now the whole concept of these Elohim, right? These gods, he says, create the world and Adam and Eve, right? Is that true? Well, again, quoting from Heiser, the solution is much more straightforward, one that an ancient Israelite would have readily discerned. What we have is a single person, God, addressing a group, the members of his divine council. It's like me going in a room of friends and saying, hey, let's go get some pizza. I'm the one speaking. A group is hearing what I say. Similarly, God comes to the divine council with an exciting announcement. Let's create humankind. But if God is speaking to his divine council here, does that suggest that humankind was created by more than one Elohim? Was the creation of humankind a group project? Not at all. Back to my pizza illustration. If I'm the one paying for the pizza making, if I am the one paying for the pizza making, the plan happened after announcing it, then I retain both the inspiration and the initiative for the entire project. So in the text, yeah, Yahweh says to the council, yeah, let's make man in our image. But then he turns around and he does it. Not them guys. Only Yahweh. Yahweh's the only one that creates these things, that creates everything seen and unseen. Okay. Genesis 1:27 tells us clearly that only God himself does the creating. In the Hebrew, all the verbs of creation in the passage are singular in form. Quote, so God created humankind in his image. In the likeness of God, he created him. The other members of the council did not participate in the creation of humankind. Let me say that again. The other members of the council did not participate in the creation of humankind. They watch, just as they did when God laid the foundation of the earth, as we've seen quoted in Job 37, verse 7. So Elohim doesn't mean Anunnaki. Elohim could mean various entities that exist in the unseen realm, which will include Yahweh. But no Elohim is the equivalent of Yahweh. And it's only Yahweh that creates everything. So Mr. Yahki is wrong on every point he's making here thus far. But what about Adam, right? He gave the impression that Adam has, been given this laborious task, right? To work for God. But is that exactly the way is the way we should see it in the text, right? Well, we're going to look at The Lost World of Adam and Eve by John Walton. He says, we learn in Genesis 1 that God was coming to dwell in the cosmos, thus making it sacred space. But we are not told where the center of sacred space would be. In Genesis 2, that is clarified. Since the 7 days of Genesis 1 has been associated with temple inauguration, it would be logical to assume that the terrestrial location of the center of sacred space, the temple concept inherent in the garden, takes place in close time proximity to Genesis 1. Despite the continuity that this concept has with the ancient world, there are some sharp contrasts. For example, rather than the produce of the garden providing food for the resident God, this garden was planted by God to provide food for the people. So again, this has nothing to do with this Anunnaki story, right? That the humans were created to harvest these resources for the gods. Here, the garden was created for the humans, right? Big difference. I have proposed that the terms serve and keep convey priestly tasks rather than landscaping and agrarian responsibilities. So he made it sound like, that Adam and Eve were just, hired hands to work the fields. No, they are priests of this temple known as the Garden of Eden. It is likely that the tasks given to Adam are of a priestly nature, caring for sacred space. In ancient thinking, caring for sacred space was a way of upholding creation. By preserving order, non-order was held at bay. So Adam was given a very specific and very special and noble task, right? It wasn't just, give me some corn, give me some apples so I could sustain myself, which would make God a contingent being. And we all know that Yahweh is not that. But no, he created this garden, this temple complex, if you will, and Adam is the priest, and by working in this temple, helps to regulate the order that Yahweh created. So this is not some slave labor for Adam. Is he working? Yes, but the work is noble and amazing. And important, right? By preserving order, non-order was held at bay. Sacred space existed because of the manifest presence of God. Adam was given access to the sacred space as a priest in order to be involved in preserving its sanctity and mediating its benefits. Sacred space was also the center of order because order emanates from God. The idea that people would subdue and rule is based on the idea that they would have a continuing role as God's vice regents in his image to preserve order and to extend it under God. That was the initial role of Adam, and would have been the role for all of us if they didn't rebel against God. But because of the redeeming work of the cross, we now get a second crack at being the priests that Adam was in Eden. In fact, us as believers, we are training ourselves to be that holy priesthood for a new heaven and new earth where we get to preserve order. Something for us to look forward to. Not looking forward to laborious, the sweat of our brow, just working the fields. That's not the work that we're going to be doing. We're a holy priesthood. God deems us special. He made us different than any other life form on this planet. We are the only carbonated creatures that are his imagers. Right? Vastly different than what Mr. Yahki wants to talk about, the position of Adam. All right. So let me see here. What else do we do here? Next clip. All right. Share my screen here. Michelle Turner's in the building. What's going on? And now we're gonna go to the 9-minute 19 mark. All right, and here we go.
Nothing died, so you wouldn't eat meat. Then, in fact, when you get to the book of Revelation, chapter 21, when it talks about how Elohim descends its spaceship from the earth, they call it the cube or the Merkabah. And it talks about Christ coming back, the Christ consciousness coming back, and Jerusalem descends from the heavens, the Hashemayim. It descends from the heavens. It reminds me of a spaceship returning, or Nebaru returning back to earth. But notice what it said when Nebaru returned back to earth. It said that we was going to get superhuman-like powers, going to get our powers back. It talks about 144,000 being mighty and having the genetic code to be able to jump and fly over mountains. But it always go back to the diet too. It said it was going to go back to a tree, and these trees bear 7 different manners of fruit.
Yeah, you heard him right, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get our powers back. We're going to get our powers back. I don't know if you guys remember, it was a few years ago, there was in Twitter, it's supposed to be a particular date, I think it's called the solar eclipse, that all black people are supposed to get their powers. You know what I mean? So I guess that's going to happen now, during the time of revelation. So what do you think about that, Nick? You're a big apocalyptic guy. We're getting powers? What's up? What say you? Yeah. Michelle got some beef with you, man. It says, Pastor Nick, you could take lessons from him about revelation because I listened to your sermons and you never mentioned the spaceships because Nick is hiding it from us. Right? Oh, man. So somehow these spaceships are going to come, pick us up, and give us superpowers where we could jump over mountains and, stop bullets, I guess, with our teeth and, all sorts of great stuff. So, but he talks about, the Merkaba, right? So he's injecting other things in here that we don't see in scripture. Like, what does he talk about? He talks about the Merkaba and stuff like that. Well, wow, Original says he has the superpower to cook gravy. Okay, I don't know if that's something to brag about, but okay. Cook gravy. Interesting. So we're going to look at Judaism for Dummies. Okay? Judaism for Dummies. So what exactly is this guy talking about? The earliest mystical movements of the 1st century BCE and the first 2 centuries CE were broadly known as the Mesa Makava, the workings of the chariot, and Mesa Bereshit, the workings of creation. Bereshit mysticism primarily explored the images from the book of Genesis. Merkava mysticism focused largely on the prophet Ezekiel's image of the chariot and was characterized by meditative visualization of a chariot drawn by four mythical beings, each with four faces and four wings, glowing and surrounded by fire and lighting. Imagine focusing on the fearsome image for an extended time in meditation. If you do, you may see why such practices proved unpopular with a large number of people. Palace mysticism, which focuses on images of various chambers of a heavenly palace, also encouraged visualization meditations as avenues of the transcendence of ordinary states of consciousness. Right? These various forms of Jewish mysticism taught that through meditation and various, mental techniques, that you could somehow create the very vehicle that Ezekiel used to get to heaven. I kid you not. This is something that they believe could happen, right? Which smells of sorcery, if you ask me. All right, we're just gonna conjure up this vehicle, this mystical vehicle, and I could just go to and fro, right? So that's what Yahki's talking about. And where does this come from? Well, there's a book here entitled "The Gnostic Imagination: Gnosticism, Mandaism, and Merkaba Mysticism" by Nathaniel Dutch. He says, thus far, we have seen that Shalom considered Gnosticism and Merkaba mysticism to be parallel, third stage religious movements, each developing in response to and perhaps from within rabbinic Judaism. Yet, Shalom went even further in linking Gnosticism and Merkaba mysticism, for he explicitly defined Merkaba mysticism as a form of Jewish Gnosticism. In order to understand what Shalom meant by the phrase Jewish Gnosticism, we must examine Shalom's definition of Gnosticism and Merkaba mysticism. Responding to a question from Jonathan Smith concerning the identification of Merkaba mysticism as, quote, Jewish Gnosticism, Shalom stated that such identification was appropriate for three reasons. One, the Merkaba world is parallel to the pleroma of Gnosticism. Two, the danger-filled ascent of the Merkaba mystic is a, quote, Jewish variation on a Gnostic theme. Three, the use of magic, seals, names, etc., is necessary in both Merkaba mysticism and Gnosticism for the successful journey to the Merkaba or the pleroma, respectively. In this formulation, Shalom omitted the element of esoteric and esoteric illumination, which he formulated in Jewish Gnosticism. Instead, as he did in Origins of the Kabbalah, Shalom stressed the importance of magic or thurgery in both Gnostic and Merkaba ascents. So Yahki somehow interjects Merkaba mysticism into the text of Revelation, which, no one in the Bible would have agreed to any of this. This is sorcery, right? Magic, seals, names. Very antithetical to what we see in the canon of scripture. All right, so again, he's just interjecting this because I guess it sounds great, so. But yeah. Oh man. So yeah. That's what we're doing. Yeah, spaceships, songs, now it's a proper theology. Nick, they've been doing this for some time, man. And it's like, it's not just the ancient astronaut theory. Many Hebrew Israelites also subscribe to this. They believe that the vision that Ezekiel saw was a spaceship. Of course, not all Hebrews, but the One West denominations definitely subscribe to that. Right? So it's been around for some time. We know that the Nation of Islam also speaks of the will that's in heaven right now. This giant spaceship with all these nuclear weapons that's going to destroy white people at a specific time, right? So ufology has definitely made its way in these Black identity cults. You know, so wanted to share that with you guys. You know, it's always good to fact check, and you know, you might be wondering why even do this, because to many of us it sounds so outlandish. Thousands and thousands of people listen to this guy. They really listen to this guy. He's an up and coming dude. He's very similar to, I don't know if you guys remember Yada. Yada was the one that claimed that, you know, Black women are not supposed to have menstruation at all. You know, and of course, you know, he was also, I think, an advocate of parthenogenesis. Shout out to Dinu. So when these new guys come with these old talking points, you know, somebody needs to, you know, push back on these points. And I guess I nominated myself, I guess. I don't know. Pray for me. So I hope this helps. I hope that, you know, if you have friends that engage in this kind of stuff, that you can use this now as a resource to help them. You know, because that's the reason why I make these videos, so that, you know, you might not have the time to do all the research, but me being the nerd that I am, I have the time. So but I make these videos so that when you have these conversations with people, you could be equipped. And even if you still are uncomfortable with having these discussions, you could at least share the videos. Like, hey, I have a friend that did a video on that subject. Take a look at it and we'll discuss after. You know, I definitely want what I do to become part of your ministries. You know, when you administer to people, I'm hoping that these things can aid you in answering the questions that people have. Because unfortunately, you know, your personal testimony, as amazing as it is, for a lot of people, they don't care. What they do care is they have these questions and they want the believer to be able to answer those questions. So as Christians, we are all apologists. You don't have to have a YouTube channel to be an apologist. If you defend the faith, you are an apologist. And we all have to become better and more equipped to give an apologia for the hope that we have. Right? So that's why I do it. That's why the UA does what we do. And we come from a long line of apologists. You know, we didn't invent this. And if Christ doesn't come back, there'll be a new generation doing what we're doing. Right? We're going to toe the line, 10 toes down. We're going to defend the gospel. All right? From threats, both foreign and domestic. So with that being said, y'all, you guys have a good Friday. BK signing out. Peace.